Hi, I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Grace.
And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and I am excited about our conversation today. I think you're going to learn, hopefully, as much as I'm going to learn on this one. I'm going to be taking notes as we're talking to, we have Nate Wysk, the general manager of PointCentral, joining us. And we're going to talk all about smart rental automation with our short-term rentals and the good and all the things that we can, the things that we might not think about when we think about automation. And then also I'd love Nate to talk a little bit more about some of the things going on in the industry, but I appreciate you joining us on the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
Happy to be here, Shawn. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to all the things that we can share together here.
Heck yeah, this is gonna be fun. Those of you that are longtime listeners, we just like to have good conversations with good people and share a lot of those different things that are going on as our vacation rental game and short-term rentals continue to evolve and mature. And automation is one of those things that is always evolving and maturing. And so this is going to be a fun one. But Nate, on what I always like to do at the very beginning, as we start off these conversations, is kind of rewind the clock a little bit back about with PointCentral, with you, and how you guys really got into this short-term rental game and what that really looked like and when that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So quick backstory on myself. I've actually been in the smart home technology business for about 14 years now. Started with our parent company. So PointCentral is a wholly owned subsidiary of Alarm.com, and worked in a variety of roles doing some international expansion there. But about 5.5 years ago, decided to get off the road and to take on a new challenge and help grow the PointCentral business. So I've been in the PointCentral role here for 5 years and the GM for about 2.5. PointCentral, though, is a really interesting story. Actually, it got purchased by Alarm.com around the time I started with Alarm.com as an idea, and it was all predicated on locks and secure entry, auditable, trackable entry to properties. Ironically, it started in trying to go to small businesses who had a lot of people who needed keys. Think delivery drivers going to bring food products to fast food restaurants in the middle of the night, things like that. There's a market for it, but there was this also strange phenomenon that happened where people were putting these commercial grade locks on the side of vacation rentals on coastal communities. And we had an aha moment. I was like, wait a sec, I think this is a bigger market. And that was kind of that classic entrepreneurial startup pivot that made the hockey stick happen. That was about 12 years ago. And I kind of think back to then, like how ubiquitous were smartphones in our pockets, things like that. It maybe wasn't as obvious then as it is today. And now it's just become, I'd say, pun intended, the foot in the door is the lock to a lot of professional enterprise vacation rental management communities and properties. But it's turned into a heck of a lot more. I'll save that for later in the show. Well,
absolutely. And it's interesting because we think about the lock stuff, and even today, right? I kind of say it in, a little bit as like a jab at some people that like there's still operators that still use, they're trading keys in and out. And it's crazy to me that we even today, because that technology has been around for a while, and we think about automation, which is way beyond locks anymore, right? And it just is. So we can go there right now. Let's talk about what really, smart automation, smart home automation is, maybe we think of thermostats, maybe we think of locks. It's way beyond that, right? Maybe we think of some sort of security, but it's everything together.
Yeah, it is. We actually have started to kind of use this phrase of smart property technology. It is a home, absolutely, but there's other properties that we're in. And it's smart property technology for professional property managers and owners. And I'll kind of come back to that one. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is build this platform that unifies and simplifies the management of smart home devices, or IoT devices, for those familiar with kind of Internet of Things terminology. Bringing all those devices together across your portfolio into a single management platform that helps you create remote control and efficient automations, coupled with some expert service that you can provide to that property, whether it's a short-term rental. We also do long-term and multifamily apartment buildings, things like that. But at the end of the day, we're all trying we're kind of striving to create a safe, efficient, sustainable desirable, thriving communities wherever we operate
Yeah.
through the use of technology. So some of the devices you mentioned, I think that are most common are, it all starts with locks. Like that's the in the door. There's a whole lot of reasons why that's like pretty ubiquitous at this point. Smart thermostats, leak detection devices, automated water shutoff valves for catastrophic flood prevention. We have a smart noise monitoring device. So the list goes on. Doorbell cameras, things like that.
Yeah.
We bring all that together. We make some of it. We bring in third-party hardware for some of it, but ultimately with that goal of just making the lives easier for the owners and operators in these rental communities.
Yeah. And like you and I were talking about before we hit record, at the end of the day, one, as an owner, it saves us, it can help us save cost, right? We're going to be a lot more efficient with where we're spending our money, how we're monitoring things. For our managers, it makes things easier for them, more efficient when you start to do check-ins and checkouts and communication to, set everything back up for somebody when they're done. But it trickles all the way down to that guest experience, which is so important in our game, right? And so like you were talking about the major pillars that you guys really focus on, and it's across the board from the owner to the manager and operator to all the way to the guest. And that's where it all helps everything tie together for all three of those groups.
Absolutely. The three pillars that we most commonly focus on, and I will say actually in order of priority, are operational efficiencies, asset protections. I think the home, the unit, it's an expensive asset that you own.
Yes.
Let's protect it and the things inside of it, the people inside of it too. And then there's guest satisfaction. Now, I don't want to sort of diminish the impact of guest satisfaction, but the reason is, we know that top line is important, but what I don't want, anytime I talk to an operator or an owner, I very explicitly discourage them from building a business that is predicated on putting technology in that generates fees and increasing the top line. Maybe it does, but think of that as icing on the cake. If you can't rationalize the ROI of investing in technology, and this doesn't have to be PointCentral, it's really technology in general, as a business owner or an asset owner here in this real estate game, that you probably should, based on bottom line and operating efficiency, you probably shouldn't invest in it because you're too dependent on sort of economic changes that can sometimes be macro and sometimes be micro. So again, asset protection and operational efficiencies are the starting point here. And we absolutely know that we can help. Technology helps people build a strong bottom line, a strong business through those value pillars.
Yeah. And I can tell you just asset protection, just starting with that one, just a personal experience. Like I have a property, and anybody that's ever had a property that had a water leak or a pipe burst or something like that happen. I had one in a mountain area up by Yellowstone National Park. It freezes in the wintertime, and we had a freeze and nobody was up there for a while. Pipe broke and we have water going everywhere, and it was a mess. And then it freezes, right? And so some of those things, like when my eyes just kind of popped open, because I didn't even know there was such thing as automation that would have an automatic water shut off. And so I'd heard of some of the water detection stuff, but I'd never even knew that you could shut water off automatically. So, but since that happened, it's like I have PTSD from that happening. And I've had times where I've driven, I'm like, I don't know if that water got shut off in the wintertime. And so I'll drive 4 or 5 hours up to just make sure that we actually shut the water off to the cabin in case something happens. We don't have water everywhere.
Yeah. There are dozens and dozens of stories just like yours. I had one where actually I couldn't, because I was in an apartment. I couldn't put the valve in myself because it wasn't my unit. I was actually doing a long-term rental. I was driving out to Steamboat for a snowboarding trip and got the notification on my watch. I put the leak detectors in there. I got a notification on my watch that said there's water under your washing machine. I was like, I'm clearly not home. And I know I didn't, like, the washing machine's not, like, I left the sink running.
Yeah.
I was the first person in the entire apartment building to know, and called our manager because I couldn't shut it off because we didn't have the valve.
Yeah.
But she had to cross country. It was a snowstorm in Portland. That it was rare. Something froze in the roof and started coming down, but she cross country skied 5 miles across Portland to come to the building and do the maintenance to make sure it was off. Imagine the value there of not having to do that and just turning it off, because that was several hours before she could get there. But every minute counts in that, and she still helped prevent even more damage that might have happened.
For sure. Absolutely. And so, just asset protection when it comes to this stuff is is huge. And it's one of the worries that a lot of owners worry about, right? When we're like, hey, I bought this property, it's across the country. And even though I've got a management company in there, or I've got somebody that might be, checking in, even if you're managing it yourself and in between guests, being able to monitor some of those main systems while you're there, or, even the thermostats can tell you a lot. What if the heat just skyrockets, or the heat drops completely in the wintertime somewhere, that maybe somebody left a door open or a window broke or something like that? You really can get ahead of any really major damage by being able to have those monitoring devices in place.
Yeah, Shawn, that's right. But you talked about some of the catastrophic stuff. We talked about that risk management and asset protection. But I always also make sure I don't fearmonger here. It's not everybody has that.
Sure.
When you have one, leaks turn into like $9,000 problems, right?
Yeah.
And then insurance premium increase it. But it doesn't have to be that. It could be as simple as the lock, and thinking of, you got risk management is good management. Another phrase I like to say. Awareness equals peace of mind too, though, and then the ability to control from afar. But think about the risk. You invest in a property. It's a huge investment. Maybe the biggest that you've made, or one of the biggest investments you've made. You got a little bit of a fear of like, what's happening, who's coming and going. Even if you're hiring a third-party property manager, a trusted property manager, they want to know who's coming and going. Physical keys. Let's get back to the door.
Yeah.
How do you know? You can't. There's no audit trail. How many keys are duplicated? It might say do not duplicate, but it doesn't stop somebody from going to Home Depot and duplicating the key. Not fear-mongering there, but you just don't know who's coming and going. Why don't you, when you can, it's pretty straightforward these days, remotely provision access? I can actually give you a perpetual key as a maintenance person that's authorized, but it only works during times I say that you can come in, because this is a scheduled time, or I know that the property isn't occupied by a guest, because you probably shouldn't go in during that time, right? So there's all this type of stuff with like remote control and automation that you do that also adds to that sort of awareness, peace of mind, confidence building, in addition to the time and money saving that knocks on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I love about what you guys are doing at PointCentral, one of the reasons I wanted you guys and was excited about this conversation, is there's a lot of smart tools out there: noise monitors, locks, thermostats, all these different things, water, the water monitors. Not all of them connect together, and that can be kind of hard sometimes, right? They're all, Wi-Fi enabled and different things like that. And I'd love you to talk about your guys' how you use the cellular network versus Wi-Fi. But one of the things that is important when you start to put all this together is it's got to be simplified. It's got to work together too, because there could be, you could buy a lot of really great products, and if none of them connect and work together, it kind of doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. And our job as the smart technology provider and maker is to make it so that you don't have to be a technology expert. It just needs to work, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that oftentimes when our stuff is working the most is when you don't even realize, or you kind of forget that it's working. Now, we like to remind, and we have customer success teams that reach out and be like, hey, just checking in, making sure like all this value, if the value comes from you not having to think about the door lock, right?
Right.
It just works. It's a black box. But while I say that's what we pride ourselves on, right? The reliability, the robustness of this. Not all technology, not all devices are created equal. That's just the fact of the matter. I could go on and on about all the different protocols: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth Low Energy, Z-Wave, Zigbee, blah, blah, blah. Again, the audience here, I don't think needs to know. That's what our job is, to turn that into something that just works for you. But what we do from our side is take a curated approach to the hardware ecosystem. So we don't work with every device. We make a hub so that we can securely and in an encrypted manner connect to our cloud. We actually run our own cloud. The data that we have is sensitive, Shawn. We know when a door is locked or unlocked in a home. Our parent company does life safety monitoring for 9 million plus properties around the world. It has to work. And that data can't get out to other people. So we run our own cloud, and we connect through this secure dedicated tunnel on AT&T or T-Mobile, depending on the area. AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon. But it's a cellular connection. We do run a dual path via fixed line Ethernet that you can have as an option. We just don't think that right now Wi-Fi and certainly in rural environments and things like that is stable enough to provide that consistency. We have a lot better management of the external communication through our hub. So that's kind of part one. When it comes to the devices, we choose a curated ecosystem. Some we make our own smart thermostat because it gives us better control, more sophisticated automation. But we also do support some third-party thermostats that connect to our hub. We don't make locks. There are plenty of people who make really good locks out there. So we work with the best in breed manufacturers, as long as it has the right protocol, it'll speak to our box in a secure manner. And then there's various other devices. We make our own smart noise monitor. Again, gives us better control when we do that, but it also allows us to design for specifications. So I wouldn't call our ecosystem proprietary. There are some proprietary devices, but I'd call it curated in the sense that it's going to be a support nightmare if you just go buy a bunch of devices off the shelf at Lowe's or Home Depot. I'm not saying all the ones are bad, but when you don't know how they work together and you're just trying to buy the cheapest thing out there, there's a chance you're just going to deal with that headache later supporting it.
And if you're not an IT expert, just trying to connect it all can be really, really overwhelming really quickly. And I say that speaking from experience. And so it's that's some of my biggest things that I've done and kind of steered clear of some of the home automation is I went and bought the off the shelf stuff before. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be really great to have. We go buy it and we put it together. And then all of a sudden, one thing's working, another thing's not, our internet goes down and everything needs to be reset and nobody's there. And so there's all these little things that we didn't think about before we put it together like that end up being a real headache down the line. And then we have all these fancy devices that we don't hook up. And it's like, we're just like, okay, we're not going to use them because they go down and we don't, maybe they're down for 6 months until we're out there again.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good product marketing out there. There's some good products as individual point devices too that may work, but when you start to connect it, this manufacturer to that one, they've all got their own little quirks, or maybe they actually sort of don't want you playing that nicely with other manufacturers' devices. So is it a little bit of design friction, maybe? Accidentally designed friction? Yeah, probably.
Exactly.
But that shouldn't be what you, as either an owner of a rental property or an operator of a rental property, should be spending your time thinking about, right? Look, that's where you bring in technology partners.
So as a technology partner like PointCentral, is that like if we said, hey, people want to know more about how to set this up, is it like, okay, I'm going to call you guys. It sounds like you've got some hardware, there's obviously some software, there's a hub that everything goes, and then we're really paying for you guys to monitor it and be that partner that makes sure everything works together. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say monitor is a one, because I want to make sure that I don't say like we're sitting there watching. If we're watching, if it goes down, we tell you. But we will automate notifications to you that something's battery is low. Go replace the battery.
Right.
Communications down. We just may not know what's happening on property, so we're not going to roll the truck out there to go see why it's there. But we know that especially in short term, you're going to be there a couple times a week, so let us help you. We provide the escalated phone support for that. But yes, so the contract would happen with us to be able to buy the hardware from us, third-party stuff. If it's the same SKU and model and you want to buy it elsewhere, you can. But our hub, you'd buy through us. We offer two things: a self-install. Whenever you want to put it in, we'll talk you through the install. We'll give you all the training videos if you want to do it yourself. I like to kind of encourage some of the folks on my team to make it. I know I've been in the industry for like 14 years, but it still is very much a make it so easy that I can do it kind of mentality. And so it's pretty straightforward. We probably have about 75+% of our vacation rental operators who do self-installs these days. Pre-pandemic, by the way, it was completely flipped. It was 75%. We offered a do it for you professional install service. We still offer that. Pandemic, just people realized I can do this myself, kind of because I have to. I can't have people coming in, these third parties walking in when I have guests. We all need to stay apart. And so it shifted it. And I think people had a little bit of an aha moment of, wait, the technology is easy enough to do it myself. But when you're busy, or if you just don't feel comfortable, we offer a turnkey service that will go out and do the install, the configuration for you. And then we have the support. We have customer success teams that provide this ongoing service. And that's why we don't like to look at it as a vendor-client relationship. We talk about it as partnership. Like, we're in this to make sure it's working for you. We trust that you don't need us that often, but especially at the beginning, training, things like that, we're here to make sure that you feel comfortable deploying this technology.
So the technology is in place for us to monitor our own properties then. So we're really monitoring anything going on. Yeah,
because again, the owner may have your whether it's you operating it yourself or your third-party property manager, that's who probably should get the notification that there's a leak, right? Like,
Yeah.
when says we're going to serve that and make sure you get that notification in a variety of different ways. But that property manager is the one that's still going to go to the site or press the button to say, turn off that valve until I get to the site and can survey it myself.
Yeah. And there's also savings when you have these types of systems in place. I know with a number of insurance agencies, right, that they're saying, hey, listen, if you have some of these devices in place monitoring some of these things, then we're going to give you a cut on your insurance, because they know that they're going to mitigate the damage when they can get ahead of it on the front end.
Yeah. And I would encourage, just on that, so insurance is a complicated beast. It's also very particular to your area, that home,
Yeah. Oh,
that
for sure.
company. But as an owner, ask your insurance company.
Absolutely.
Most of them won't do it proactively and give you a discount, but tell them what you got, and you got a trusted brand that's enterprise grade, and push them on it. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. They're not gonna call you up and say, hey, congratulations, Shawn, you just saved 20% because you did this. You're gonna have to ask for it, but and not everybody's gonna do it. But you'll be surprised at some of the discounts you can get by having some of these monitors. I mean, noise monitors are a big one. I know a lot of insurance companies will make sure that they give you a discount on. You've got, I would assume that I'm going to for sure, I'm going to for sure be talking to you guys about the automatic water shutoffs and the water monitors. Those are big ones. And when you've had water damage, in which I've had water damage multiple times, it's a really frustrating thing to happen in a property when something breaks, a pipe burst, or just something starts leaking and it's not shut off for a couple of days, because water can do a lot of damage really quickly. And I'm assuming that insurance companies would love to see those types of devices as well.
Water is one of the top 3 areas of cost for insurance companies.
Yeah.
And they're big costs. It's usually not like a small chip away one that they can kind of hide. Like, that's something they optimize for. And if you get an actuary on the phone, or you have a buddy that's an actuary and can run through it with you at all, they'll kind of break it down and be like, yeah, this is where the bulk of, the constituent parts of your insurance policy come from. Water is one of the biggest ones. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that, the cellular versus the Wi-Fi, but I think that's a bigger deal than a lot of people might think, even though you might be in an area with really good Wi-Fi service, but Wi-Fi, routers get disconnected and unplugged, and a lot of things are plugged into them and they don't get reconnected. And so I do think that when you're talking about monitoring devices and smart home automation and locks and everything else, that's just having that on that cellular network versus the Wi-Fi network that can go in and out or get unplugged even if you have great Wi-Fi. That, I feel like that's a big deal. I have a property that's in a rural area, and the internet and the Wi-Fi is very spotty. The internet's spotty, period, which means our Wi-Fi is spotty, right? And so, it goes in and out all the time. In fact, we have some smart locks that are connected to the Wi-Fi, not cellular. And we actually ended up having to put one of those, like a master lock with just the spinning, you spin the code on the numbers, just in case a guest calls and they can't use the smart lock, right? And so that's when you're talking about that, I'm thinking, man, that would solve that problem, and I don't have to give this code out where everybody has my key now to the cabinet.
Yeah, like I said, this is not the time on the podcast here, but Shawn, you got to call me after this. We got
right.
to get
Yeah. Oh no, that's why I'm bringing this up, because I'm like, okay, this is, you and I are going to be having a conversation about getting these things set up. And so, and I never, we don't think of it as a problem as much on the properties that have really strong Wi-Fi, but the fact of the matter is those things do get disconnected and they have to be rebooted on a regular basis.
Yeah, or think about it, even it doesn't have to be got disconnected, the Wi-Fi is down. Like, a lot of people have good Wi-Fi, good router. But what happens when 12 months later, you're like, for security perspective or reasons, I actually just want to refresh my SSID or change the password.
Yeah.
Or my kid is smart enough to change the password, and they're like, I want to do a funny one. Well, nobody thinks about 12 months, 6 months, whatever down the road, that all the devices that are connected to it, except the ones that are the TV and your computer and your phone.
Yes.
Now your lock's not connected anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, I forgot, until you get a phone call, somebody trying to check in, like, why didn't the code go to it? Oh, because it's not connected to the network anymore.
The Wi-Fi password changed, right?
You look to us, and we use the phrase dedicated, right? So we have secure, that's the encryption part, but it's a dedicated path for your smart property technology ecosystem. We manage that. It's not dependent on your Wi-Fi, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. Like I'm like wanting to, like you and I are gonna have a conversation here shortly on my whole portfolio, right? It's like, okay, I love the smart technology that, all the, like you say, the smart property automation, right? I love how that has evolved. I mean, I started doing vacation rentals and buying my first vacation rentals back in 2006, and we were putting them on Craigslist, and we were exchanging keys or hiding a key somewhere, right? It's come a long way since then. Mm-hmm. And the automation is awesome, and we feel like we still incorporate a little bit of it. But even after this conversation, I'm like, man, we're leaving so much out there and so much exposure. And, on some of those other things we've talked about, we talked a little bit about HVAC, thermostats, locks. We talked about the water stuff. Is there any, are there other things that we haven't touched on that could open some eyes to, hey, man, that's another piece of automation that would be really great for cost savings, operational efficiencies, or, even the guest experience.
Those are certainly the big ones. We did sort of touch on like the noise monitoring. We call it our smart noise monitor. That gets into a little bit more of, it's automation because it ties to it and get notifications, but that's probably more on like the regulatory side of things.
Yeah.
Like, how are we addressing this kind of, the boogeyman in the industry right now, which is, you got hospitality and hotels pitted against vacation rentals or short-term rentals, or what about the professional operators versus the Airbnb hosts? And the end of the day, like we look at it as like, it shouldn't be us against them. Like, we're all collectively in this business of hospitality.
Yeah.
They're bad actors or people bad apple spoiling the bunch, probably, but it's a small percentage, but that's where the press comes from.
Yes.
Right? Parties happen. Do they happen at all close to a majority of the time? No. But when they do, that's when neighbors get concerned or communities get concerned about the prevalence. There's other stuff about, economic impacts and housing costs, not the place to go into that. But on this noise part, it's like the little thing that we can do to help you be a good member of the community. And so when you can have a device, and when we can use technology or build technology that helps you say, I'm doing all the things right. Like, we're doing this. We're trying to be good stewards of the local economy. It helps a lot when it comes to being able to keep that business, right? Keep this asset that you've invested in able to generate rental income. And that's actually one of the risks we're seeing. I'm sure you've seen this, and I don't know exactly how spread out your individual properties are, but some municipalities, it's $1,000 right now for your first noise violation. What are you gonna do? You're going to either eat that as the owner and or operator, or you're going to pass that on to the guest. And sometimes you can, but that's not good for anybody. And then you get 3,000 on your next one, and third strike, you've lost the permit.
Yeah.
And in many of these places, they've now put barriers around how many permits there are. So you're out, somebody else is in, and you can't get the next one.
Yeah. Not getting in.
Now you're sitting on a third property that's not generating income. What do you got to do? You got to sell it.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that you want to prevent from happening. That's another kind of like side door catastrophic event that can happen. But when you can use technology, you can think about providing that experience and just being a good professional owner and manager. I think everybody wins.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody wins when you raise the bar. You act like a professional host, right? We're good neighbors. We're good stewards of the community. We're good neighbors to the local, the long-term residents in those communities, and everybody will win, right? And we can do those things. These are very preventative things that we can do. And when we have these things in place, we can also shut down some of those minority problems that happen, and because they are a minority, but it's what we hear about and it's what they focus on when they happen. But and so we want to get ahead of it.
And at the end of the day, like, it's probably good that there is press around that, right? We should be aware. We shouldn't turn a blind eye to it.
Absolutely.
We can help make, from our perspective specifically, make technology that helps solve those problems.
Yeah.
And from your side on the ownership group, we can talk about sort of operations, and we're all modernizing, right, with technology, with this ultimate goal that we're helping professionalize. We're helping turn this into a good business and something. We say standardization. I'm not saying it's like every unit looks the same. Actually, that's part of the beauty of the short-term rental, vacation rental, is there's each unit and property is unique and has that, but that consistency of experience or standardization of experience and level of expectation is so important. It's also important for just repeat guests, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the guest expectations over the last few years has just skyrocketed, and they should really, as it's become a very mainstream, accommodation preference for a lot of people that are traveling. We should be raising the bar as host, and there should be, like you said, a standardization of, a certain level of expectations that should be raised to a certain point of, which is like, and the barometer is, okay, we need to act like with cleanliness and safety and everything else as hotels, right? We need to have that level of, of expectation that the guests can come in and say, okay, here's where it is. And so when you look at it, and, you've been in the business and in the industry for a little while, just as we kind of wrap things up, where do you see, like, this is a rapidly accelerating asset class. It's rapidly always has been on the technology side. Your guys is, when you're in the technology world, you want to talk about running fast, right? You guys have to run fast. And so where do you see things going? What changes do you see on the horizon? Do you think it's just going to kind of become a lot more streamlined for everybody? Do you think it's going to become, hey, if you're not doing this, you're going to be left behind? That's kind of what I think a little bit is, and that comes down to those expectations of the guest.
Yeah, I think we'll start with that. It's that train's leaving the station, but it's already in motion. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like, a couple of years back, maybe pre-pandemic, it was, okay, we're getting close to departure time. Get aboard. There was lots of people doing it. Now we're moving, but you can still hop on this moving train. But it was mind-boggling. Like, I'll give you the story, Shawn. Last year, got married and went to do it was a local honeymoon with family that was in town, and we went out to this beautiful house, like a pretty large house. Not a cheap house, out on this bluff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the coast of Oregon. And I went there, and the way I got my keys, it was after 4 p.m. They weren't there to do the check-in, so they hung them on the front stoop of their building on a little hook, and they had a video camera that I won't name like the brand of it. It wasn't ours, but it was like one that is very much like, that's very consumer grade, looking at me coming up and picking up a piece of paper packet with a key ring. What are they going to do if anybody shows up and takes it? They've got it on video, but what if I've got a ball cap on? I was blown away, and also that an owner would entrust an operator to give their keys out in this open environment to a multi-million-dollar house.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like, that was surprising, but I think that's a small percentage. Now it's about getting the technology maybe you have deployed, if you've got a digital lock, and realizing that it goes beyond locks. Well, that's a big trend that we're seeing. Yes. That was the foot in the door. That's where people started. But now you can see, I can automate the energy, the HVAC system when the guests aren't there. Why do I need it to be 68 degrees where they had it set while they were out there? It's 100 degrees out on the beach.
Yeah.
Why does it need to be like that? Or I left a door open and I went to the beach for 6 hours. We have little sensors that if the door's left open, we can cut that AC back down to a more reasonable level or off, saving owners costs. So I think people are starting to just become more familiar with it. Early days, it was a trust thing. It was unfamiliar. Now I think there's enough critical mass that people are like, I kind of got to do this. Or get back to bottom line, or else I'm not probably running an efficient business or an efficient enough business.
Yeah.
So it's not, I wouldn't say revolutionary. There's some future stuff I can talk about, but I don't even think that's what it is. Like, I'm all about practical solutions. A lot of technology companies build shiny objects to say, look at this thing. We'll do some cool things. And we have some innovation in the pipeline for sure.
Yeah.
But we're solving practical problems for real world business owners,
Yeah. And I totally agree with you 100% that I think the future is familiarity and being able, ease of use, right? Being able to actually plug into these types of systems and being able to not feel like, holy crap, I have to have an IT degree to be able to actually have a smart home anymore. And that's where you guys come in, like, companies like PointCentral and you guys being able to do that, make it, and we trust it now, right? Okay, it's really familiar. There's a level of trust there. It's familiar to us, but now that ease of use is starting to come there, where that helps with the implementation for a lot of people, and the adoption of it. And now it's just going to skyrocket, I think.
100% ease of use. We say usability internally a lot. Like, make it so that you spend less time having to do stuff with it, get the information, the relevant information to the right people when they need it to act on.
Awesome. Yeah.
The rest
love
of
it.
the stuff, don't spend your time tinkering.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to know all the, like you said, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the cellular, this and that, the other. I don't care. I just want to be able to plug in and easily use it and implement it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Nate, this has been a great conversation. I always appreciate when we can talk to professionals in the industry that have, seeing this industry grow up and mature and continue to help, host, operate at a professional level, but also really, as numbers get tighter and tighter in this game, it's always nice to add these efficiencies into our business as well. And so I always leave at the end of every episode, I always have one question for everybody. And this does not have to be applicable to what we're talking about, but I always say, okay, if we can rewind the clock 10 years, we've got a lot of people that are moving things forward and always running forward. And, there's a lot of lessons we learn along the way. Is there a specific lesson or something you'd like to share to say, okay, if I could go back and give myself some advice, 10 or 15 years ago from what I know now, and it can be just life advice. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with to say, man, if I could go back and tell myself this, I would have done that?
I'll be honest. I like to when I do these, I like to listen to early recordings, and I've come across a couple of years before, so I can't lie. I prepped.
You were good. Awesome. Love it.
Because otherwise, I give you a terrible answer. I will cater to the audience though on this. I think it's just relevant life lessons. I don't know. But it's about real estate. I think it's about intentionality to me. I do look back to some periods of time where you can always look back and kick yourself for not investing. You've said it on one of the recent shows, and it's the old adage: the best time to buy real estate's yesterday.
Yeah.
Next best time's today. But I think it goes beyond that to me, because that's just too easy to say, cool, I could have. But it's go in and just give it the extra thought and be intentional with it. I think because the reason this is relevant to me is over the last several years, and I think what we're seeing in the market right now of vacation rentals, demand during the pandemic outpaced supply slingshotted to catch up, and now it's outpacing demand. And that's not saying we can have arguments, different areas. Is the demand falling, or is it a relative basis to supply? Like, whatever it is, there's more supply. And that's putting pressure on some of these owners who thought they were just going to go make a quick buck, or it was the best investment. And they didn't do it. They did it hastily. They didn't do it with that intentionality. I don't even know if some people bought, if they thought they were going to operate it themselves or hire a third-party manager. Just take that beat, take the deep breath, and be intentional. It's a business plan. Even if it's one unit, it's a business plan. The investment decision and criteria are different if you're going to go do the cleaning, do the maintenance, redo the sheets and do the laundry, or if you're going to hire somebody. And it's not a bad thing at all to hire somebody, because that's what they do. There's economies of scale. So it's just that. It's just give it that extra little thought. Don't do this hastily, but get into it.
Love it. That's what, and see, I'm glad you prepared that, Nate, because that's one of the best answers I've had. I love the fact that, because you hit on it, especially in our world, in the short-term rental world, a lot of people jumped on without a lot of intention, didn't realize they're buying a long-term asset, and they jumped into a game where, if everybody's honest, like I tell people, it's like having a short-term rental the last 3 years was like having toilet paper during COVID, right? Everybody was making money because demand far outpaced supply, and it's always going to catch up. And so if you're very intentional about the game you're going to play, you understand how to play the game in all aspects of the game, not just, okay, I'm going to buy a property and it's just going to ride this wave, right? Properties are expensive assets, and there should be some intention behind understanding what, and short-term rentals have pros and cons like everything else. And so you have to understand the whole and the entire game and be intentional about playing it the right way, or how at least be intentional about how you want to play the game, right?
Exactly. It's not like taking $100 to the casino or buying a couple of stocks for $100. We're talking hundreds of thousands, or tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's long-term commitment. You just be intentional, and it gets into anything. I'm not even talking about the PointCentral side a little bit.
Totally agree.
Technology purchases or things like that, they can get away from you, especially if you're considering just doing it yourself. You don't realize, I might want that. Well, most of the time, a professional manager has already made those decisions, done the research, and there is real value. It's kind of funny how many people I do hear, like, I can do it better myself and cheaper. And you're like, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe not. Those of you that listen to me for a long time, you know that I don't believe that. I think, I think those of that are intentional about it, and that's what they want to do, and they want to be in the hospitality game, they can do a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
But I would say 95% of owners are not operators either, because there are economies of scale. And
if you don't have a plan to scale, you're going to fail. You're going to hit a cap, and then your whole plan of I got to get bigger. I need 20 properties to make this work doesn't pan out.
Doesn't work. Exactly. Well, Nate, this has been an awesome conversation. If people are as excited about as I am to like go implement this into our properties, where can we find you guys? Where do you want us to point everybody that are listening to PointCentral?
Just go to www.pointcentral.com. On there, you can click around, check out some of the product, and there's get a demo, or just contact us there and put in your information. It'll get sent to the right appropriate salesperson. Also, if you just have questions, Nate Wysk at PointCentral.com. I'm happy to answer them or pass it along to the right person on our side.
Awesome. That's awesome. And so we'll put that in the show notes, you guys, as well. We'll put PointCentral.com and then Nate's email address if you really want to reach out direct to Nate and have any additional questions, because this is something, like I said, that I'm really excited about. And so those of you that join us, we know how valuable your time is, and we very, very much appreciate you spending it with us. And you guys always know at the end of every episode, I ask two things, and that is, if you got any value out of this, to share it, like it. If you have more than 30 seconds, leave us a review. And number two is to go pick one thing that you can do today to start living that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.